It is. It very much is. So, so anyway, so we are looking, Alan, if you have any, we'd like to start off with a trivia question, but my trivia questions were irrelevant by the time I looked them up. They were dated for July and not for August. So
I wouldn't have mentioned anything. I heard a good one the other day. They're talking about Charles Barkley, the famous basketball player who's now an announcer. And they said, how many NBA championships has Charles Barkley won? Because he had these famous duels with Michael Jordan, back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And they said exactly 0. None. Yeah. He never beat him. And I thought,
that's right.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, he was never able to. But as an Illinois resident, I'm sure that you have lots of ways to remember how many Michael Jordan has for your in-state bowls and all that.
Yeah. So, but Michael he still is in Chicago. He's still there. He just sold his NBA franchise, for several $1 billion.
Right.
Yeah. So
it's a good investment to have made a decade ago, huh?
Well, people in Charlotte evidently are happy too, because he just wasn't a very good owner relative to, when to spend money to bring a champion to that town, That's a huge basketball area, man. Carolina, gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the blood, for sure. So, well, hey, Christina, give us a heads up whenever you're ready for us.
Yeah, I think we can just slowly get started. I see people joining here as we speak. So.
Well, very good. Well, why don't we just get started here, folks? Welcome. This is the Iowa Farmers Union Lunch and Learn series. This is part of the Farmers Union outreach, where we learn from all sorts of people who are experts in their field, from farmers, from academics, from journalists. And we are so grateful to be joined today by Alan Guebert. Thanks again for joining us, Alan. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Aaron. My pleasure.
Christina, give us an update on a couple of Farmers Union activities that are going to be happening in the coming month or so.
Yeah, I have a couple of things here. You probably have already heard these before, but I'm just going to remind folks, IFU will be at the State Fair August 10th through the 20th. We'll have a booth in the agricultural building. I think it's a little bigger than years previous. So we're excited to be there in the new space. You can come and join us in 2-hour shifts. You can sign up for as few or as many as you want. You'll get a free ticket to the fair, an IFU t-shirt, and you'll just come hang out and talk to people about IFU. Also, at the fair, we'll be doing some local food cooking demonstrations. So if you want to come and help us with those, you will be asked to sign up separately. So I will put a separate link in there and you can snag those spots. Fly-in this year, if you're interested in attending fly-in September 11th through 13th in DC, email Aaron so we can make arrangements. I will put his email in the chat. Aaron, that's everything that I have for folks.
Well, very good. And we'll look forward to seeing people at the State Fair. Alan, we are in the agriculture building, and we are right next to Living History Farm, and just down the hall from the Butter Cow. So we know it's a very popular spot at the Iowa State Fair. And we really look forward to having some good conversations there with people. Our guest today, again, is Alan Guebert, and he's an award-winning agricultural journalist. You find his work at the Farm and Food File, and very syndicated in various places. And we love to distribute Alan's column on a regular basis here at the Farmers Union as well. It's been a summer extreme, so Alan's going to take us through some of those extremes that are happening this summer, both in the weather and in politics and in agriculture. But before we do that, I just want to remind people, if you want to learn more about Alan's work, go to farmandfoodfile.com and check out his book, Land of Milk and Uncle Honey. Memories from the Farm of My Youth. He wrote that book with his daughter, Mary Grace Foxwell, who collaborated with him on that book. It's always a treat to have Alan as our guest in the Farmers Union. Welcome, Alan. How are you?
I'm fine, Aaron. I'm fine, and I'm more than happy to be here. I want to, before I go on to three quick topics, and then we turn it over to the audience to see what's on their mind, ask questions. When I lived in Des Moines and worked at Successful Farming Magazine, I lived on East 41st Street. And I was the only SF editor that lived on the east side, let alone East 41st, which was next to the cornfields. Really, it's the next street was in Altoona. And every day I rode the bus, and I rode it right past the fairgrounds. So I remember going to the fairgrounds quite a bit back then. What I wanted to really briefly hit on are three things that are still going on right now that are pretty important. I mean, I want to look at climate, where we are in climate, because July was a month like none other ever in American or even weather history anywhere in the world that anybody can remember. I want to look at Russia because of the Black Sea Agreement falling apart. There may be some signs that it's going to be put back into place, and very soon. Nobody's happy. And then, of course, the Farm Bill, which needs oxygen. That whole debate needs to be revived, and because it's not going there very rapidly at all. But anyway, I wrote this week's column about climate, this coming week's column about climate. And we are what we think we are, what we usually call in the farm the dog days of August. Dog days of August do not mean dog days when the dog's under the shade tree or on the back porch. The dog days refer to the constellation K9 Major, which is the big dog constellation, when the main star in it rises right at dawn with the sun. And the ancients believed that those two, the sun and this constellation, this at the same time, combined to make the hottest days of the year. And guess what? It always comes in July and August. This year, the so-called dog days meteorologically are from July the 2nd to August the 11th. And July was just a blistering a month around the world. Just listen to this. Phoenix had 110 days of high temperatures or more for 31 days straight. Can you imagine? There were 31 million acres of Canada have burned. Now, what's 31 million acres? Kentucky is 25 million acres, and it's still on fire. So there's no doubt that it's going to burn at least twice as much as the old record, which would make about 36 million acres. Southern Europe, the average temperatures in Southern Europe, and this would be France, Italy, Spain, Greece, the average temperatures in Southern Europe for July was 104. And then you say, well, you move out of that area and you go to China. China set 400 heat temperature records in May. And they had the worst May drought they've ever had. And that followed on a yearly drought like last year, with something like 6 million hectares or 15 million acres went unplanted. So it means, of course, and now China's experiencing these incredible floods. So China is going to be a big food buyer around the world, a big food buyer. And keep in mind that about up until recently, about a third or more of Chinese corn came from Ukraine. So if that corn, that maize, and corn is the biggest export out of Ukraine, not wheat, not like we normally think. Corn is by far the biggest export out of Ukraine. So that combination is going to do something with the corn market. And of course, you want to talk about the corn market, you want to talk about any markets, good luck. I mean, you're in August, what's going to happen? Next Friday is the big crop report. Man, I stopped betting on August crop reports a long time ago. And I would suggest that, I'm not a betting man, and I wouldn't think many people in Iowa or Ames or Iowa City are today either, given the news. But man, what a volatile market is up ahead for us. And that kind of takes me over to Russia. And everybody's pretty familiar with it. It's been 9 days really since Russia backed out of the Black Sea Agreement and warned everybody that it was going out and that any shipping and any ports directed at Ukraine were open game for them. And they've carried through. There have been 126 port buildings, Ukrainian port buildings, bombed or destroyed in those 9 days. And then of that, 180 million metric tons of grain have already been destroyed. So depending upon the source you use, Ukraine has 32 to 40 million metric tons of grain poised to come out. But what you don't hear too is that the boycott kind of works both ways, or the blockade kind of works both ways. The Russians can't get theirs out either under threat of Ukrainian attack. And you know how much grain Russia exports? At least 50 million metric tons. Most of it is wheat. And you can make the argument, and some people do, especially Black Sea grain analysts that I talk to or follow, they make the case, they're on the ground, saying that Russia is as hurt about this with this boycott as anybody, because it needs the money, vitally needs the export earnings to continue the war. And without it, they could see a lot of woe coming to their the Russian effort this winter, which is all very interesting, which also leads to where we are today. Interestingly, earlier today, the US Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, all but guaranteed the safety of Ukrainian-bound and Russian-bound grain ships to be loaded in either ports to leave the Black Sea. All but guaranteed them today, and said that if we can work something out, nobody's ships will be under attack. And that might have a real appeal to the old Soviets, because like I said, they need the exports. And interestingly, last week, Russia promised at least 7 nations in Africa, and the sub-Saharan Africa, which is the southern area, the Sahel area, that they would supply any lost Ukrainian grain exports. So how they're going to do that, I'm not sure. This is one way they can. And I think maybe Blinken is taking advantage of that hole or that emptiness, that vacuum that now has been created. So I think that's really an interesting alternative. Pardon me. So we will see. But again, if you look at the markets, again today, Russia bombed Ukrainian export facilities on the Danube estuary, which is very northwest Ukraine. The Danube runs south into the Black Sea. It's one of the major rivers in Eastern Europe, is the major river. Goes through Vienna, goes through Bratislava, and then ends up into the Black Sea. Major port. On one side is Ukraine. And Russia is sending drones and bombing those facilities. Not 300 yards away is Romania. And if any of those drones, if any of those pilots of those drones, wherever they're sitting, get confused or mixed up, and they drop those bombs on Romania, the wrong side of the river, there will be a NATO response, because Romania is a NATO country. And that, who knows what happens after that? I mean, you think cooler heads would prevail, but who knows? And this thing is, what is it? They said this thing could get out of hand really fast. But again, the people in the Black Sea region think that Russia is a far more pragmatic when it comes to grain exports than the bellicose nature that they've taken and the tone that they've taken recently. Which we will see, but again, that stacks up here in the middle of August. But the markets, like I said, they're not believing a whole lot about that grain staying put. They see that grain moving. They see it moving sometime in the next 6 months. The world's not in need of it just now. So you don't see the grain markets going crazy. In fact, the wheat markets were higher today, this morning, in the overnights, when news came that Russia was bombing again. and then they sank back down, and they're actually lower right now.
Right, they're lower.
So I don't think I think the world examines the global market now more than anything, rather than the individual players. And the global market is pointing to vast amounts of corn and soybeans, especially in the southern hemisphere. So it's just an enormous potential down there, not just this year, but the coming year, which kind of points to where, the third thing I wanted to chat about briefly is the U.S. Farm Bill. And the word on the street, the back word is a private word, actually, even out from the staff members from this U.S. Senate, is there won't be a farm bill in September. There just won't be. While the Senate people are working on it, they don't see much movement on the House. And even if the House was moving, and the chairman of the House Ag Committee, Glenn Thompson, he was actually in Minnesota yesterday, which I thought was really interesting, and the Farm Fest, and guess who was with him? Your congressman from the 4th district, Randy Feenstra, which, if I remember right, doesn't have any constituents in Minnesota. I don't know what he was doing, but he wasn't doing his job. We know that. And they don't come back to Washington until September the 11th.
That's right.
And then when they come back, they're only there 9 days until October. And as much as you think the ag appropriations bill or the farm bill should be what they're focused on, the big fish to fry is the federal budget. If it's not put into place by September 30th, the government gets shut down.
Right.
And the politics behind that, it's incendiary. It for all intents and purposes, if you polled the U.S. House, forget the Senate. Senate's done their job. They're ready. The House hasn't done their job. And we talk about the Freedom Caucus, the hardcore right members of the House. But there's even a group of that that's kind of split away, and it's called the 20 now. And the 20 include members who aren't in the Freedom Caucus. In fact, got thrown out of the Freedom Caucus, like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Matt Gaetz is a member of the 20. And 20 is important because Speaker McCarthy only has a 5-vote majority. So if he's got 20 people aligned against him, the party's over before the first cork gets popped. It's not happening.
Right.
And they proved how they can do that. They proved in June that they can do this by shutting down the House for a week. McCarthy sent everybody home. They couldn't pass one little silly messaging bill. So McCarthy made a deal to be speaker, and part of that deal was to put these members on these key committees. To last week, for the House, the ag appropriations bill to go forward, you needed a rules committee vote. A rules committee runs what gets to the floor. They're the gate. And McCarthy put 3 of the 20 members on that committee. They are the swing Republican votes on that committee. They wouldn't let a vote happen last week. So it didn't even get out of the rules committee because of these 3. So it's in serious, serious trouble. At the same time, what I find really interesting is, there's 52 members of the House Ag Committee, 52. And only 9 of the 28 Republican members of the House Ag Committee were around when the last farm bill was written in 2018. Only 9. And in fact, 40% of the House, not just the House, 40% of the, all the members of the U.S. House of Representatives are new since the last farm bill passed. So there's a lot of education that needs to go on in this farm bill. And most people, the fact is, won't do it. Most people will look to leadership. What is that leadership wants? Well, leadership is split. Kevin McCarthy made a deal with the president, back in June. The 20 and the House Freedom Caucus says, no deal. We're not doing that deal. We're doing more. Well, there's the standoff. It doesn't matter what kind of deal gets done in the White House, between the White House and congressional leaders. So that farm bill is in serious trouble. The House Ag Appropriations Committee, the bill, that's in serious trouble. The budget, the government shutdown, it's 50-50 now. And every day that passes, it grows. So
Right.
Congress is stymied. The Black Sea deal may be coming through. And man, you tell me what's coming for climate, and you could figure it all out. I mean, this is a tough year. It's a really hard year with a lot of issues that are going to need a lot of leadership on it. A lot of people, a lot of farmers need to get in the game, or even if they're in the game, it's going to pick up. I mean, it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah. There have been lots and lots of signs of how difficult this process was going to be to pass a farm bill.
Mhm.
And in addition, even the defense authorization bill was extremely difficult to pass and nowhere near getting final passage and signed by there. But there was a question about the food insecurity parts of the farm bill, the nutrition parts of the farm bill. Any after the last battle, Senator Stabenow said, "Hey, we're done with that issue. It's all over." Not so much from the House side. Since those proclamations were made, any thoughts about where the nutrition pieces are in the farm bill and how it still is extremely important to get final passage?
I wrote a column last November after Glenn Thompson won his election and was probably going to be the chairman of the House Ag Committee, saying this is exactly where we're going to be. We're going to do it. We're going to do it again. What we did in 2014, we did in 2018. We're going to do it in 2023. We're going to fight. The House is going to fight over, SNAP. The one thing I didn't mention was how organized the big ag groups were in favor of not touching SNAP. That's new.
Yeah.
Now, will the Republicans fall in line in the House after that? The 20? They don't fall in line for anybody. I mean, logic and facts don't play a lot in their political calculations. So I don't know. And Kevin McCarthy is literally powerless to do that. Now, can the House Ag then somehow figure out how to do this and get around the 20? Not a chance. There's 20 votes. They need 15 at least, or 16 of those votes. So I don't know how they do it if those people hold the line. What that suggests is two things. The farm bill might not get done till December, like a year ago, or like the last time.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute possibility. I would not rule that out. In fact, I would favor that as of today. But keep in mind, they can't really change the current SNAP spending. It's baselined in. So
Right.
even if there's no budget, the SNAP program continues, even if the government shuts down. So,
Right.
the fight here is one of ideology. It's not one of fact. It's not one of what needs to be done. I think Stabenow will make a stand. She's not up for re-election. She's got nothing to lose.
Right.
And I think Barrasso, the ranking member in the Senate, the Republican from Wyoming, he'd fall in line with her. Remember, John Barrasso is, dependent upon who you talk to, is number 2, 3, or 4 in the Republican hierarchy in the U.S. Senate. He wants to be number 1. So who knows? But I'm sure Stabenow is going to hold the line.
Yeah. So, there's been a lot of talk about whether there's room for a farm bill debate in 2023 to be transformational in how it impacts rural communities, income and equity and wealth retention. What do we see as far as how this is going to impact rural communities, as far as stemming the tide of consolidation in agriculture, either at the farm level or in the agribusiness level?
USDA and your native son, Tom Vilsack, has kind of taken on that in an ad hoc manner by using CCC money, Commodity Credit Corporation money, in developing an answer to climate change, by funding hundreds of millions of dollars of alternative ag or new idea ag programs that would help farmers. Because I think rightly so, they know that the rural economy depends upon the farm economy. And it's got to have far more diversity in order to have far more, rural support and far more rural economic impact. And that means increasing the number of crops growing out here. That also means downplaying the role that ethanol plays in the overall ag economy. 43% of Iowa's corn, the nation's corn, goes to ethanol.
Mm-hmm.
1 in 4 cars sold in America this year will be electric.
Mm-hmm.
In 2035, no American automaker will be making a car with a gasoline engine.
Mm-hmm.
And by 2050, less than 30 years from now, the whole country will be driving an electric car. Most of us, with the ones with gray hair, been around in ag for at least 30 years. Some of us a little bit longer. So 30 years is that fast. That fast. And if we're not ready for it, it doesn't matter. It's coming. And we had better start moving in that direction. That's one of the things I emphasize in my column this week on climate change. It's not 1973 anymore.
Right.
It's not even 2013. It's 2023. The world's shifted. And if we're going to shift with it and be around in 10 years, we better start making the move, at least knowing where we're going to head. We don't have a clue. Well, I give Bill Sack credit for addressing some of those issues. Now, he's doing the same thing, or farmers are doing the same thing with USDA technology and money when it comes to the packing industry. I love seeing it. I don't know how it all works. Man, it's been tried. You just come up with every iteration you can think of it. They've all been tried. And I don't know how they succeed if the big boys don't want to play in their game.
Well, and certainly that anti-competition bent that we have makes all of this innovation moot unless we can really address the competitive discrepancy.
That's a greater point that I like to stress over and over and over again. The big guys are making the switch already. They see it coming. Right. They know what's happening. They're making $400 and $500 million investments in the packing plant or grain handling facilities for 10 years down the road. Not what's going to happen next year. Those things are in place already. They're already writing those things off. They're spending money for where we're going to be in 10 years, and they're going to be there already. And you know who's not there? We are not going to be there. And they're going to have the high ground. They're going to have all the ground. And, the whole economic choices that we're going to have are going to be very, very limited. So think about it this way. Say there's 2 companies control 85% of all the corn and soybean sales in America, and you want an antitrust action against them. What happens? How do you do that? What if you break them up? Where do they go?
Right.
Who's going to buy them? I mean, we got to look. Those things are already cooked. There's nothing to do about those things. You have to move to new entities, new ideas, new energy. That's what we have to do. And in Iowa, you guys know it better than anybody. You guys, I'll bet you Bruce Ratstetter and the Pipeline Gang had no idea they're going to run into the buzzsaw that they've run into. Because people are saying, wait a minute, we need to do something different. We're not sure, but we're pretty sure this isn't it.
Right.
And I think that's the overriding message that nobody has written about yet. We're pretty sure this isn't the right way to go. Yeah.
We'll have time for just a little bit more conversation, folks. So thank you for sending your questions in. When we get to as many as we possibly can. The use of the CCC, the Commodity Credit Corporation, it's been pretty creative under this administration. And one of the questions that was asked of us is, what is your opinion about the creative use of the Commodity Credit Corporation and how that impacts Farm Bill discussions?
Well, I'd like to use the word cowardly. but I'm afraid to use that word in Iowa. But I think it's a backdoor. It's kind of oh, don't watch me, don't listen to me, backdoor way of getting some programs financed. That you can argue about how it started, but there's little question the Trump administration figured it out. They gave the money directly to farmers. At least it's being done now in a constructive manner. Not that the Trump administration's use wasn't, but I'm just saying that at least they're spending it on something that would be more broad-based helpful. Would I like to see them not? Would I see them do the same thing with legislation, with ideas? Absolutely. Because then we know they'll last. Then we'll know they're serious. Then we'll know we're going to get some kick. But right now, it's not out of range at all. I call it purely political. And that means forever, whatever that means, good, bad, or indifferent. But one thing it does mean is if the administration turns over, those programs are gone. Because we've turned the CCC into now a political football, and it's bouncing around just like a fumble. And the next administration is going to grab it and do something more with it. And that's unaccountable money. You know, that money is in the baseline. You can spend it if the administration or USDA is permitted, legally permitted to spend it, and it looks like they are. What's going to keep it from being a slush fund? $30 billion a year. Well, that's a lot of slush.
Yeah.
And you know, Congress is pretty good at slush.
Absolutely. So we're moving into quickly into the August recess, a very short September work session. All those factors dealing with the budget, with and ag appropriations, shutdown threats that we're sure to hear pretty soon. One of the final questions that was asked is, where do you see Farm Bill discussions taking place? We're going to see a lot of work done in August and September, but you know, is that going to gain traction or not? And you mentioned that Senator Stabenow doesn't have a re-election coming up, so she can hold on. What's your timetable that you're looking at for your Farm Bill work, for trying to follow where Congress is going to be at on?
Well, right now it looks like the Senate is working. The Senate member staff are working right now to get their version, at least in the form that the Senate Ag Committee can vote and then take to the Senate floor. The Senate floor in September is going to be a minefield. They got all these State Department appointments, all these military appointments, just Federal Reserve appointments. They can't get through hardly any of them because of holds and everything. That's just a disaster. Chuck Schumer he should just put on Kevlar before he goes back, because he's just going to be shot at the whole month. I don't see him passing anything in out of the Senate. That means they'll never get to conference with the House, who hasn't even put forth a working draft.
Right.
And they're, like I explained, are just they're in terrible shape as far as political divide. So can they have a quick vote to extend the current Farm Bill? Yeah, and they probably could do that for a year. Done it last 2 times.
Right.
I would guess that that's the backdoor way out of this mess. It's the quickest way. Will they, if they do that, would they then get it done by, say, Christmas? Doubtful. But keep in mind, next year is a bloodletting, full war political year. So, man, you don't get stuff done this year, and you think it's hard this year, it'll be impossible next year.
The lift only gets heavier.
Yeah, and the players just get hungrier.
Yeah,
you know, there's a lot more at stake in 2024 than now, if you think that's even possible.
Yeah. Well, very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll encourage people to read their Farmers Union Barn Door Bulletin, where they can find your work, and farmandfoodfile.com is a great place to find your work as well, Alan. Thank you for giving us a preview of some upcoming things that we'll see in your columns, and we always look forward to the conversation. So appreciate it very much.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm, like I said twice already, I'm more than happy to do it. Stay well.
Excellent.
Good luck to all the guys, men.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Everyone, this has been the Iowa Farmers Union Lunch and Learn, and we are so grateful that you are supporting the Iowa Farmers Union by being here today. If you haven't had a chance to sign up as a member, please do so today. And if we know that we advocate for family farming, sustainable agriculture, and for vibrant rural communities best when we all work together. And your voice and your support is greatly appreciated. So sign up today if you haven't had a chance to. We'll look forward to seeing you at our Lunch and Learn next week. Christina, thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good day.